This topic, we will talk about the recent development in logistics management. I will follow this outline to talk about this lecture. I will first explain what is logistics management and talk about the globalization of logistics and show you the industries and companies have changed their view to logistics. By this, I mean they actually feel logistics is more and more important right now. And actually, they have some pressures for this change. So because of that, the pressure push them to integrate their supply chain. And after the integration of supply chain, they actually find some benefit from that. Learning objective of this lecture. After this lecture, I expect all of you should be able to answer the following question. First, you should be able to define the logistics management. And then you should be able to discuss the pressures for organizations to realize that logistic management is important and essential. And finally, you should be able to identify benefits from the logistics integration. And you can use as a checkbox after this lecture, see if you really learn what we try to let you know. So, what is logistics management? We have to know what is logistics management before we talk about global logistics. So, all the organizations move materials to support their operations. These materials are both tangible, such as raw material components, finished goods, and spare parts, and or intangible, for example, informations. Logistics is the function responsible for these movements. It manages the transport of storage of materials on their journey from original supplier through supply chains and onto final customers. So the logistic and supply chain management, in very strict definition, they are different. If I quote the definition from the Institute of Logistics, which I think their definition is strict, so the logistic and supply chain are different. So the logistic is the time related to positions of resources or the strategic management of the total supply chain. This is the definition for the logistic. And the supply chain is a sequence of events intended to satisfy a customer. It can include procurement, manufacture, distribution, and waste disposal, together with associated transport, storage, and information technology. So these two definitions are different. Logistics, supply chain, in the very strict definition. However, in practice, the terms logistics and supply chain management are used interchangeably. So, in the following lecture and following classes, I will not make a strict definition or strict different between these two terms. I will just go for the practice because they use the interchangeably. So sometimes I will talk about the same idea, use the term logistics. Sometimes I will talk about the same idea by using the term supply chain. I will just don't do the strict definition and make them different. However, all of you should remember in very strict definitions, these two terms are different, but in practice, they usually don't differentiate that. In Chinese, we also have 运筹管理, 供应链管理, and 物流管理. So, in strict definition, in my opinion, logistic management can translate to 运筹管理, and supply chain management can translate to 供应链管理. And we also have 物流管理. 物流管理, in my opinion, in very strict definition, it is more close to the term of material flow management or flow management. However, as I said before, in practice, these three Chinese terms, 运筹管理, 供应链管理, 物流管理, are usually used interchangeably. So you may have to know their strict definitions, but you also have to bear in mind in practice, actually, they may all mean to the same thing. Unfortunately, people like to use different terms to describe different aspects of logistics. For example, the supply chain may be called process management when emphasizing operations, and sometimes called marketing channel or logistics channel or distribution channel when emphasizing marketing. Sometimes it is called as a value chain when considering added value. And sometimes it's called demand chain to show how customer demand is satisfied. Or sometimes it's called as supply network or supply web to emphasize its complexity. The variety of this terminology can be confusion, but this is the reality. We have to live with that, and I don't think in the near future people will all agree to a standard terminology. So you have to know the fact. I also like to talk about the differences between the following two terms. The first one is the global logistics management, and it focuses on strategic planning, decision, and design, and is usually related to long-term goals, long-term visions, long-term policies, and it is usually in larger scale, and it has broader mission, and it usually related to larger capital investment, and it usually related to the change of organizational culture. So another one is the international logistical operations. So the international logistical operations focuses more on operational decision or sometimes partly on tactical decision or planning. So it usually related to short-term operation, short-term planning, short-term decision. and sometimes most of the time is the weekly or daily operations. So because the strategic decision set the context for the tactical and operational decisions. So the global logistic management actually set the context for the international logistical operations. So the global logistic management is quite important because it belongs to the strategic decision. When we talk about the global logistics, the globalization here in our context, the globalization means economic integration and development across country and regional borders. And global interdependence can be good or bad. Unfortunately, despite the importance of logistics, there is a long history of organizations or industry just paying a little attention to their logistics. They traditionally put all their effort into making products, selling product, or designing product, and then consider the movement and storage of materials related to logistics as an uninteresting chore or routine job or tedious tasks. And they think logistics is a part of the overheads of doing business. Um, Day back to 1970s, Peter Drucker is the pioneer who first pointed out the logistics problem in business. He said that he described that physical distribution as the economic stock continent means there is a lot need to be explored and a lot never been pay attention to. And he also said that logistics is the most sadly neglected part in business, but logistics is the most promising area of business. So I think Drucker is a pioneer who first find out the problem of logistics in the organization or business date back to 1970. However, the industry or organization um, have not paid more attention about logistics till 1980s. So after 1980s, organizations began to realize that logistics can be expensive and they gave it more attention. Like Shapiro and Haskett mentioned in 1980s, they say the industry uh, finally realized that there are few aspects of human activity that do not ultimately depend on the flow of goods from point of origin to point of consumption. So after 1980s, the organization start to pay a lot of more attention in their logistics problem. We use some figures to show how important the logistics is in the companies and industry. And because of that, the companies and industry start to pay more attention on the logistics and realize the logistics can be very expensive. Um, if you look at the gross domestic product, we usually call it GDP. In United States, about one-fifth of the GDP a year might be spent on logistics, and this is just account for transportation and storage, not consider about the procurement and the manufacturing. So just for the transportation and storage, a year GDP account for one of fifths in logistics. If we look at the GDP a year in United Kingdom, we also can see a large percentage occupied in the year GDP. Um, in United Kingdom, the way they calculate the GDP is a little bit different from United States. The item might be different, but there are 12% from wholesale and retail, and 6% from transportation and storage related to logistics. And overall logistic costs are considerably higher because in United Kingdom's GDP, they also do not consider procurement and manufacturing. And these two are classified to the other item. So some study actually showed that the overall logistic cost in industry is about one third of GDP a year for most of the country. So the logistics occupy lots of activity and cost in every area. Here is some figure from a survey collect the data from the companies and industry, and the figures show that about 98% of companies consider logistics management to be critical or very important. This figure shows almost all the companies think logistics is very important. And the same survey also asks different questions, and it showed that 90% either currently improving their supply chain or planning improvement within the next 2 years. So it's about 90% they are thinking and doing or will do in the future to improve their supply chain. The main pressures for this changing view of logistics can be summarized as follows. Recognition that logistics is an essential function in every organization and that it directly affects overall performance. Realization that decisions about the supply chain can have a strategic significance. Appreciation of the high cost of logistics and the opportunity for major savings. Growing emphasis on customer service and the way this depends on logistics. Increasing competitions for both users and providers of logistics who have to continually improve operations to remain competitive. New types of operations which can force changes to logistics, such as just-in-time, total quality management, flexible operations, mass customization, lean operations, and time compressions. Improve communications, allowing electronic data interchange, so-called EDI, or business to business, B2B, or business to customer, B2C, and other aspects of e-commerce. Other pressures including the follows: improved technologies such as item coding, electronic point of sales, we usually call it e-POS, and global positioning for identifying, locating, and tracking materials. A general trend towards integration of operations, including strategic alliance, partnerships, and collaboration. More organizations concentrating on their core operations and outsourcing logistics to third parties. More organizations adopting a process focus with logistics as an integral part of the whole process of satisfying customer demand. Changing patterns of power in the supply chain, with large organizations dominating some areas and setting prevailing standards. So everyone in the supply chain have to follow the standard, and it helps the supply chain integrate together. Growing concern for environmental damage and changing attitudes towards pollution, waste, traffic congestion, road building, and so on. Changing government policies on the ownership, regulation, use, responsibilities, and cost of transport. Sustained growth of international trade, particularly through free trade areas such as the European Union, we usually call it EU, and North American Free Trade Agreement. Initially, organizations respond to these pressures we mentioned in previous slides for change by looking for improvements to the separate activity of logistics, say procurement, inventory control, warehousing, materials handling, packaging, transportation, and so on. But it soon becomes clear that these are not isolated activities, and changes in transportation have direct consequences for warehousing and other logistics operations. The best results clearly come from considering all aspects of material movement in a single integrated function. This gives a broader and more inclusive view of logistics, with relevant activity coordinated under the umbrella of a unified function. The result is a more effective and efficient flow of materials with lower overall costs. The figures in this slide show that uh, most of the organization or companies have aware of the importance of the integration of supply chain. Based on a survey collected data from the industry and companies, 57% of companies had moved to some form of integrated supply chain. Significantly more than 90% of companies expected an increase in integration over the next 3 years. And among this company, 25% of them are moving to fully integrated system. Although when doing this survey, it was not very clear that this fully integration actually meant by those companies. But however, they are moving to the fully integrated systems. So why those companies think the integration of supply chains is so important? And the same survey also asked a further question about what the benefit those company can think of from the integration of supply chain. And here is the summary about this benefit. The first benefit is the common objectives for all parts of the supply chain. And then genuinely cooperation to achieve these objectives, and less uncertainty, errors, and delays along the supply chain, less duplication of effort, information, planning, stocks, etc. Also, elimination of operations that add no value for customers, improved efficiency and productivity, giving lower costs. The benefits from the integration of supply chain also include lower stocks and shorter response times, actual demands triggering replenishments, faster and more flexible responses to customer demands, sharing information and highlighting important features such as costs, making planning easier, using available technology such as ePOS, EDI, and e-commerce, focusing on the importance of logistics. Those are the benefits that those companies feel they can get from the integration of supply chain. I will use the following key points to conclude this lecture. We first define and explain what is the logistics management, supply chain management, and material flow management, and also talk about the differences between these terms. And we also talk about that in practice, in reality, logistics management and supply chain management, these two terms usually used interchangeably. And then we talk about the pressure for a change to logistics, because this pressure, so the organization and industry have to integrate their supply chain more and to improve their logistic and supply chain management. And the integration of supply chain actually can help organization and the industry get more benefits from that. So the pressure is like a push force to push organization to improve their logistics. And the benefits is like a force pull the organization and industry to improve their supply chain or logistics management. Part of this lecture use material from the book listed here. If you like to have further information about the original material, you can refer to the book listed here.